light to dwell. Oh, come, you wisdom from on high, from depths that hide within us eye, to temper knowledge with our care, to render every act a prayer. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come within as hope to dwell.
Good morning and hello, everyone. I am Conrad Ayasi, and I have the privilege of serving on your Board of Trustees. I am a member of Calgary Unitarians because you folks are my favorite people. I feel at home in your presence. Also, the Sunday services give me a lift and help me to reconnect with my core values. Please know that whoever you are, whoever you love, wherever you are in your personal journey of faith or search for meaning, you are truly welcome here. If you are visiting or connecting for the first time, we are grateful to have you with us. We come together in beloved community to grow in wisdom, to welcome and deepen relationships, and to act for a just and sustainable world. And now a couple of announcements. First, a reminder about our traditional mitten tree for In the Cold this year. We will be collecting hats, mittens, gloves, scarves, and socks for In from the Cold at our building next Sunday, December 13th, from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, at the same time as the co-op card pickup. However, best if the mitten tree people came from 2 to 2:30 and the co-opters from 2:30 to 3, if you all can manage that. Food contributions can also be made to the Interfaith Food Bank, or contributions can be made financially with checks dropped off payable to UCC, but enter mitten tree in the memo line so we know where the money goes. All checks can be mailed or e-transferred to treasurer@calgaryunitarians.ca. The second announcement is for me to remind you that our annual congregational meeting, very important, is today immediately after the service starting at 11:45. Everyone should go to the regular coffee link after the service and you will be placed in a breakout room to chat while the directors do the quorum head count of participating members. Then we will all be brought back to the common room area to carry on with the meeting. All are welcome, but only members can vote. Please do plan on attending since we need a quorum to approve both last year's financials and our new right relations covenant. We acknowledge that this meeting takes place on the traditional territories of the people of the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations, as well as the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations of the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. The city of Calgary is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. We acknowledge that we are all treaty people. We are grateful, speak for myself, to be living in this beautiful traditional Blackfoot land. And now over to Reverend Deborah for the lighting of the chalice.
Out of the flames of fear, we rise with courage of our deepest convictions to stand for justice, inclusion, and peace. Out of the flames of scrutiny, we rise to proclaim our faith with hope to heal a fractured and hurting world. Out of the flames of doubt, we rise to embrace the mystery, wonder, and awe of all there is and all that is yet to be. Out of the flames of hate, we rise with the force of love, love that celebrates our shared humanity. Out of the flames we rise, and holding all this, we light our chalice flame. This year we have been focusing on a different faith each month, and for December we recognize Christianity, the roots of our faith, and significant to the social and cultural celebrations that surround us at this time of year. One way we as a congregation have traditionally recognized these roots is with the lighting of the Advent candles. Advent. Adventus means waiting, and the holiday season is nothing if not waiting. Waiting to get chores done, waiting for quiet moments, waiting to accept that our loved ones will not be as we wish them to be, and that we will not be together this year as we wish to be. We will light the Advent candles this holiday season, this time of waiting, to remind ourselves to enjoy the moment, the now of our lives. Yes, much is coming, and always we wait. This year, the waiting perhaps a little more poignant. Let us honor the themes of Advent, the themes of hope, peace, joy, and love. Today we rekindle the hope candle, holding fast to hope's patient possibilities. And we kindle the second Advent candle for peace. For as this season of sparkle and bright unfolds around us, the silent prayers of peace lie like hidden stars in a clouded night. May we inspire the world with peace. May we touch it to our lives, that in every place of stress, frustration, or fear, we might feel the presence of peace, easing our hearts and transforming our lives. And may we share its healing power with our children, that they might become the inspiration through which peace makes its way to a new yet dreamed of world. May peace light the world this season, and hope be ever present. With this, I light our Advent candles. I extend my welcome along with Conrad's and want to just lift up the so many seasonal events that are going to be happening within this congregation, the ways that we are working to stay connected with each other and with the community. We are going to be sponsoring a family of 8, a 3-generational family with a single dad at the head. You can make contributions to this financially, and I encourage you to do so before Wednesday. There will be also so many events happening. Conrad mentioned the Mitten Tree, and I'll share a little more about that going forward. I really encourage you to look at the e-news, and we will send a special e-news with all of these events, and participate as best as you are able. I want to include in my welcome gratitude, a reminder to all to practice that fine art of appreciation. And so I extend deep thanks to the many volunteers who keep this community connected. To Conrad and the other members of our Board of Trustees for their commitment and planning of the virtual congregational meeting that will follow, and all that they do. To the AV team extraordinaire, today Mitch and Daria at the helm with Bob ready to polish and post this service for the web. And the absolutely dynamic duo of Ev and Maddie putting together the PowerPoint. I want to thank Lynn from our Worship Arts team and a co-facilitator in the World Religions program, along with me and my dear friend and colleague, Samaya Oakley, who is here with us today. For those of you who may not know her, Reverend Samaya Oakley was the first intern here in Calgary, and it is such a gift that she is back with us today. And I invite her to join me with the opening reading. These words, reflection on the resurgence of joy. How short the daylight hours have now become. How gray the skies, how barren seems the trees.
A damp and chilling wind has gripped my mind and made me gloomy too.
But there is that in me which reaches up toward light and laughter, bells and carolers.
And knows that my religious myth and dream of reborn joy and goodness must be true.
Because it speaks of truths of older myths.
That light returns to balance darkness. Life surges in the evergreen and us.
And babes are hope, and saviors of the world as miracles abound in common things.
Rejoice and join in the gladness of Christmas.
Well, this morning, our Director of Religious Education, Sheila McMaster, will only be with us on video. But I wanted to share some of the many happenings in the Children and Youth program. This afternoon during Power Hour, the young folks in the elementary crew will be exploring winter holidays and Christmas stories. And the Youth Connection this afternoon will be exploring their popcorn theology program and watching A Wrinkle in Time, where they will look at the power of love and the value of individuality. There will also be a youth game night every Thursday at 7 p.m., and this is done in conjunction with the youth from the Westwood congregation in Edmonton. Sheila asked me to invite everyone to the See You Friday family movie night on December 18th at 7 p.m. for a viewing of A Muppet Christmas Carol. Let me also highlight next Sunday, what would have been our pageant Sunday, only this year is different. So I invite you to show your support for Sheila and the Children and Youth program by sending her a photo of you and your family, perhaps in front of your Christmas tree if you have one, or however you like to wish season's greetings to the congregation. If you're really inspired, you could make a short 1 or 2 minute video sharing some of your family traditions at this time of year. And today is the deadline for this. So please send them to sheila@calgaryunitarians.ca by end of day. Conrad mentioned the mitten tree. This is a long-standing tradition in this congregation. We collect scarves and socks and mittens and take them to the Inn from the Cold. This year is going to be different. And as Conrad mentioned, between 2 and 3 next Sunday afternoon, come and get a wave from your staff, from me, Sheila, and Jane, who will all be there waving as you drive by. Stay in your car and have your contributions for the mitten tree or the food bank in your trunk, bagged and marked. So you just have to push the button. We will take it out, and we have a special treat for you that we will put back in your trunk. If for some reason you cannot make it on the 13th to drive by the congregational building, please send me a message, as there are a number of drop-off locations throughout the city where those folks will make sure that your contribution gets to us. And now, a story for all ages from our director, Sheila McMaster.
Good morning, everyone. It is so great to see all of you on this Sunday morning. My name is Sheila McMaster, and I'm privileged to serve as the Director of Religious Education for Calgary Unitarians. And today, I have a wonderful story for all of you. It is Jingle Bells, How the Holiday Classic Came to Be, and it's written by John Harris and illustrated by Adam Gustafson. And it explores how they imagine the song Jingle Bells came to be. It was written in the 1850s, copyright 1857, and it was written by James L. Pierpont, believed to have been the director of music for the Unitarian Church in Savannah at the time. And now this is just before the Civil War. And here is our story. Jingle Bells, How the Classic Came to Be. Hot. James Lord Pierpont felt his starched shirt sticking to his back. How could it be this hot in November? Christmas was only a month away, but here in Savannah, it was still sweltering. As he walked up the aisle of his church, broken glass crushed beneath his boot. He spotted a brick on a nearby pew. Not again, he sighed. Lily, be careful. Why would anyone break our windows? His daughter asked. Well, some people don't like our church because we don't believe in slavery, Mr. Pierpont said. Someone is probably angry because our congregation has 4 members who once were slaves. Lily knelt to help her father clean up the broken glass. A sticky breeze blew through the broken window. It's so hot here, said Mr. Pierpont. At this time of year in Boston, it would already be cold and crisp, and one morning you would wake up and the ground would be covered in snow. What's snow like exactly? Asked Lily. Mr. Pierpont shook his head sadly. His own child had never seen snow. Well, the air feels sharp, he told her. You can see your breath. There's nothing in the world like sitting in a snug little sleigh beside a friend, watching the snow-covered world race by. You'd have a nice warm brick at your feet, not one crashing through. Suddenly the door opened, startling them both. Why, Mr. Pierpont, I had no idea you would be here. A stately woman stood in the doorway, and behind her, almost hidden from view, was a little girl. Pierpont smiled. Good afternoon, Mrs. Fitzhugh, Miss Esther. Take care not to step on the broken glass. What happened, Mr. Pierpont? Mrs. Few asked. Another brick through a window, I'm afraid. Oh my, she said. I don't understand how some people can be so mean-spirited, especially at this time of year. Mr. Pierpont sighed and turned to Esther. I like the flower in your hat, he said with a wink. Esther gave him a shy smile. I hope we're not interrupting, said Mrs. Fitzhugh. We're here to pick up the flower vases. Pierpont seemed puzzled. For the Thanksgiving concert? Or have you decided to cancel because of the... She glanced towards the brick on the pew. Please, Mr. Pierpont, we must have our concert, said Esther in a small voice. We always enjoy singing your new song. I suppose I've been too worried to start working on it yet, said Mr. Pierpont. Anyway, it's much too hot to think about the winter holidays. He stared out the window, lost in thought. Esther, he said finally, have you ever ridden in a sleigh or heard the sound of sleigh bells? The little girl shook her head. I don't think Lily has either. His eyes lit up. Just a minute. Mr. Pierpont climbed the stairs to the balcony where the church's pipe organ stood. He sat down and tapped a key 3 times. Plink, plink, plink. Then he did it again. Sleigh bells sound a bit like that, he sang along. Here we go, here we go. Mrs. Fitzhugh looked up at the balcony. So musical, she called. Jingling bells, riding in a sleigh, what fun that must be. Mr. Pierpont played the notes again. It is fun. Here we go, jingling bells. He paused, then repeated. Jingle bells, jingle bells. That's what they sound like. Lovely, said Mrs. Fitzhugh. Lily, could you help us find those vases? I think your father has work to do. Mr. Pierpont played 3 notes, this time a little higher. What had Mrs. Fitzhugh said? Oh, what fun. Then he put the phrases together. Jingle bells, jingle bells. Oh, what fun, oh, what fun. He smiled to himself. Perhaps this was the beginning of the song he was looking for. What we all need right now, he thought, is something to lift our spirits. James Lord Pierpont got out some paper and a pen. Later that week, Mrs. Fitzhugh and a friend dropped by the church during choir practice. I'll be right back, Mr. Pierpont told the children. Behave while I speak with these ladies. You said you needed something? Asked Mrs. Fitzhugh. I'm going to need blossoms for the concert, Mr. Pierpont exclaimed. Lots of them, white blossoms. Where can we find them? By tomorrow? Said Mrs. Fitzhugh. I'm not sure that's possible. There was a pause. Is something wrong with my hat, Mr. Pierpont? Mr. Pierpont smiled. Your hat, Mrs. Fitzhugh, has given me another idea. On the night of the concert, the church was filled. Even with the windows and the front door open, ladies fanned themselves and men's starched collars wilted in the heat. At exactly 7:30, Mr. Pierpont strode down the aisle and faced his expectant audience. Every year at this time, he said, his voice carrying to the back of the church, our children help us welcome the holiday season by performing a new song. Although we have all been disheartened by recent events, we think we found a way to raise our spirits. Despite the heat, we'll try to help you experience the kind of winter we don't have here in Savannah. I hope you'll join us in singing One Horse Open Sleigh. The congregation grew quiet, waiting for the music to begin. From somewhere outside the church, they heard a faint jingling, and the sound grew louder and louder, and the people turned around in their seats, trying to see what was happening. And 2 little girls in choir robes entered the church, shaking strands of bells. And a murmur went around the room. How adorable! Aren't they beautiful? Mrs. Fitzhugh raised a hand to her mouth. Little Esther looked so happy. And the girls reached the front of the church and slowly turned to face the congregation. And 8 other children, each one holding a small bag, filed in and took their places behind them. From the organ loft, Mr. Pierpont called down to the congregation. This is the chorus of our new song. You only have to hear it once before you know how it goes. He played several notes by way of introduction, and the children began to sing. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Still shaking the bells, the children launched into the first verse. Dashing through the snow in a one-horse open sleigh. As the children finished the song, they opened up their bags and threw handfuls of white feathers up into the air as high as they could, and the congregation burst into applause. Thank you so much, said Mr. Pierpont when the commotion finally died down. Feathers aren't snow, he said, but they're the best we could do. And I'm so glad you enjoyed our new song. Let's hope it goes out the doors and windows of our church, even through that broken window, and reaches the whole world. And James Lord Pierpont was right. It did. Thank you so much for sharing the Jingle Bell story with me and its Unitarian beginnings. And I think one message to share is how inspiration for something small can begin, and it can turn into something big. like a song that everyone knows around the world. Thank you.
Dashing through the snow in a one-horse open sleigh, o'er the fields we go, laughing all the way. Ho, ho, ho! Bells on bobtails ring, making spirits bright. What fun it is to ride and sing a sleighing song tonight. Oh, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Hey, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. A day or two ago, I thought I'd take a ride, and soon Miss Fanny Bright was seated by my side. The horse was lean and lank, misfortune seemed his lot. He got into a drifted bank, and we got upset. Hey, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Hey, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh.
Thank you, Jane. Wow. After that lively interlude, let's take a time of quiet reflection. I will begin with a reading. We'll have silence, and then Jane will bring us out of the silence with a musical reflection. I believe in the holy, lifting, sustaining among us, within us, around us. I believe in living, with a song to sing in awe, in adoration, out of joy, out of praise. I believe in loving, in intimate connection of gentle compassion, the giving of roses. I believe in seeking, daring to explore, doubting without fear, cautious in certainties. I believe in prophecy, the spirit of outrage, clapping like thunder, healing the world.
When we gather together, we take time to acknowledge the concerns, the sorrows, the milestones, and the joys in our individual lives, the lives of the congregation, and the wider community. We light first our global candle today, for today is the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women, a day commemorated in Canada on this, the 6th of December, the anniversary of the 1989 École Polytechnique massacre, though it stands for far more than that particular incident. It is a day to examine the power dynamics between men and women and to recognize that, according to the UN, 35% of women worldwide have experienced physical and/or sexual violence. This day calls us to both awareness and action in the face of gender violence. As I light our global candle, a brief silence. There are concerns in our community, concerns in the world, concerns in our individual lives. We are all at this time dealing with so much uncertainty, so much unknown, so much aloneness and isolation. Knowing this, let us find strength in that shared experience. There are many people in our community who have medical concerns right now and challenges, and I'm holding them gently. Knowing that we each have concerns resting on our hearts, I invite you, as I light the candle, to name them aloud in your own space or hold them in the silence of your heart. Our candle of sorrow and concern. And of course, there are also joys, for such is the experience of living, that joy and sorrow are partners. Today, I want to acknowledge all of the December birthdays. There are many, including my own son. There's also some very significant wedding anniversaries this month. Brandis and Bill will celebrate 50 years and Pam and Robert 25. This is exceptional. So many celebrations, so much to be joyful of. I'm joyful of the generosity that is expressed and shown through this community as we welcome visitors and as we extend our generosity to those in need. I also have the great joy today of being both here this morning and this afternoon. I'll be with Samaya in BC for their service. This is one of the joys of our virtual experience. And I invite us to focus on the joys in our lives as well as the challenges. To know that in sharing them with each other and aloud, they are magnified. I invite you to speak aloud the joys that are resting with you right now as I light our candle of joy. And I invite you now to join me in singing "It Came Upon a Midnight Clear."
It came upon a midnight clear, that glorious song of old, from angels bending near the earth to touch their harps of gold. cloven skies they come, with peaceful wings unfurled, and still their unleashed music floats o'er all the weary world. Above its sad and lonely plains they bend on hovering wing, and ever o'er its gable sounds the blessed angels sing. But with the woes of war and strife, the world has suffered long. Beneath the angel string have ruled 2,000 years of wrong. And we who fight the wars hear not the love song which they bring. Oh, hush the noise of battle strife, and hear the angels sing. For lo, the days are hastening on by prophet God's foretold, when with the ever-circling years comes round the age of gold, when peace shall over all the earth its ancient splendors fling, and the whole world give back the song which now the angels sing.
We find ourselves in the midst of a complicated season, this year with so many added complications. And nowhere is Christmas as complicated as in a Unitarian congregation, full of our different theologies. And so the question comes every December, why would a Unitarian celebrate Christmas? If we don't believe in the virgin birth, or that Jesus was God, or that he was born and died to redeem a sinful world, what business do we have with Christmas? A fair question. The answer, though, is that we have a lot to do with Christmas. In fact, the Unitarian tradition has such a significant hand in shaping so much of what we know today as Christmas that it begs asking just why Christians celebrate Christmas, given that it is so very Unitarian Universalist. At the outset, it is important to say that Christmas isn't what it once was. Down through time, it has changed and evolved, appropriating earlier traditions and morphing them into a mix of holiday and holy day we have inherited in our own time. Christmas itself wasn't celebrated in any meaningful way by Christians until the 4th or 5th centuries, and even back then, situating the birth of Jesus on December 25th was recognized as a pretty blatant piggybacking on the winter solstice, not to mention the fact that December 25th was also the birthday of the invincible sun Mithras, the Roman god with Hindu origins, who came to redeem the world from evil and who also just happened to be born in a cave to a virgin mother. From the very beginning, the basic facts of what you might call Christian Christmas have never been entirely settled, and that is in large part because Christmas was built on the foundations of a mostly pagan religions. And so there has seemingly always been an unresolved tension at the heart of Christmas, a tension, if you will, between piety and partying. By the time our religious forebearers, the Puritans, came around, partying was winning out. Christmas in the English-speaking world was a time of merrymaking, a festival marked by people blowing off steam and flaunting social convention in joyful, crude, and rowdy ways. At its most colorful, it involved cross-dressing, public lewdness, and role reversal of all kinds. Its central ritual involved the working poor calling upon the homes of the prosperous and expecting to be served the best food and alcohol in the house. Turning the class structure on its head, the wealthy on Christmas would serve those who normally served them. All of this, a safety valve of sorts that maintained the status quo and balance of power the other 364 days of the year. As you might imagine, the Puritans didn't care one bit for a day devoted to public debauchery, especially in the name of Jesus. In 1645, when Puritan Oliver Cromwell came to power in England, he enforced an act of Parliament banning the celebration of Christmas. And this was the case for 15 years. And on this side of the pond in Massachusetts, Christmas was banned from 1659 to 1681. Though there weren't such laws in place here, Christmas wasn't a big deal in Upper Canada either. There are accounts well into the 19th century that make clear that Christmas was a working day for many people in this part of the world. At the same time, there was a growing desire for Christmas to mean something more. A hope that it could be reformed into a time of reverence and moderation. Stephen Nissenbaum, who has written a definitive history called The Battle for Christmas, says, and I quote, "In the forefront of those leading this movement were Universalists who openly celebrated Christmas from the earliest stages of their existence. And the Unitarians," he goes on to say, "were close behind. Compared with Universalists, Unitarians were more genteel and, for all their theological liberalism, more socially conservative. Unitarians were calling for the public observance of Christmas by about 1800. They did so in full knowledge that it was not a biblically sanctioned holiday, and that December 25th was probably not the day on which Jesus was born. They wished to celebrate the holiday not because God had ordered them to do so," Nissenbaum says, "but because they themselves wished to." So very Unitarian, right? He goes on to say that they celebrated in the hope that their own observance might help to purge the holiday of its associations with social excess and disorder. Early Universalists and Unitarians helped to lead a movement that transformed Christmas from a celebration that took place in the streets to one that unfolded primarily in the home. The presents that had once been demanded of the rich by the poor pretty quickly became the gifts given from parents to their children. Of course, it wasn't long before Santa Claus entered the scene, and though not tied to Unitarians, he brought an element of mystery to the family-centered Christmas and a convenient revisionist marketing triumph for retailers as well. A few years later, early Unitarians made one of their key contributions in the form of the Christmas tree. Though there are, of course, pagan origins to decorating a tree at the solstice, it was Charles Follin, a Unitarian minister, who brought the tradition from Germany to North America. At Christmas of 1835, Follin decorated a tree with fruit and toys and little candles as a surprise for his children. A friend of his wrote about it in a widely read book, and within a few years the tradition had taken hold far and wide. Concerned with the growing commercialism of Christmas, though, and the prospect of their children becoming selfish and spoiled, Unitarians embraced a tradition of children exchanging gifts with their parents. The ritual became a way to teach a moral lesson about giving and receiving while reinforcing the bonds of family. This, more than the introduction of the Christmas tree itself, may be one of the most enduring and unique ways that Unitarians have shaped the holiday. Again, Nissenbaum says that child-rearing practices were linked to theological beliefs. Whether parents chose to beat their children or lavish attention on them at Christmas was linked to whether they believed in original sin. The central tenets of early 19th century Unitarians, and one that distinguished them from both the old-style Puritans, was the belief that human beings were not born bound for damnation. Puritans and most evangelical Protestants, in contrast, believed that people were inevitably stained at birth by an original sin that corrupted them at their very core by causing them to be willful and selfish. Puritan-minded parents, therefore, felt it was their obligation to break a child's will as early as possible. Unitarians, on the contrary, believed that will should be trained rather than broken. It might be imperfect, they thought, but it was not fundamentally corrupt. Unitarians strenuously believed that human beings were responsible, utterly responsible, for their own actions. That ends my quote of Neeson. That belief figured into another significant shift rooted in Unitarian theology. The move beyond a Christmas solely celebrating the birth of Jesus to a season of charity and social outreach. This spirit is easily recognized in the classic work of Charles Dickens, again, another Unitarian. It was written in 1843, A Christmas Carol derides the changing class structure and a society being rapidly reshaped by the Industrial Revolution. It challenges the notion of poverty somehow being a form of divine punishment rather than a social problem that must be solved. In a single compelling story, Dickens reinforces the central role of the family at Christmas time while also teaching lessons about charity, compassion, and human connection. Yet Dickens wasn't so much describing a tradition as creating one that resonates to this day as the larger context of our cultural Christmas. Finally, on this tromp through history, a couple of the carols in our hymnal were written by Unitarians. Both were written as a response to the horrors of war, and both ultimately representing the choice of hope over despair. We sang It Came Upon a Midnight Clear, which was written by Edmund Hamilton Sears in 1849 as a response to the Mexican-American War. While it's been sung throughout the world for a century and a half, many Christian churches have yanked it from their hymnals for what it does not say. Perhaps you notice there is no mention of Jesus. He speaks instead of peace on earth and goodwill to all, and he speaks of the hard fact that the world has long resisted what he calls the angel's song. There is another carol, I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day, written by Unitarian Henry Wordsworth Longfellow, the words. Both of these carols were radical for their day in choosing the story of striving after peace and goodwill over the story of the Nativity. And these carols remain radical in our own day as well, asking us how we contend with our despair, asking in what we place our deepest trust, asking how we invest our hope. Christmas is not what it once was. It is, like each of us, a work in progress. And so, if anyone asks why we should celebrate it, I would say because we can lay at least as much claim to Christmas as anyone else. This is our holiday, so celebrate it well. Make of it a season that brings joy into your heart and more peace into this world. Let us hold this in our hearts as we ponder and wander through this season. Blessed be.
Waiting. We're all waiting right now. The idea that there is a vaccine that will be ready to roll out in January drives this point home even more for me. That our medical researchers have been hard at work these last 9 months and have now come out with a vaccine is awe-inspiring to me. And yet we have several more months to go through. And so I wonder, how does the idea of waiting in this season of Advent help us through these times? Deborah has lifted up how the holidays have been lived out in our evolving faith. The idea that we are a people of deeds and not creeds. This faith has held on to the essence of the Christian tradition as we work to eliminate oppression at each and every turn, as we work for the flourishing of all of life. And now comes our turn to wonder how we prepare our hearts for the birth of new possibilities that this time of Advent holds. How can we do this holding the sense of awe in our hearts in the midst of all that is going on in the world? In the Christian tradition, this time of waiting is in anticipation for the birth of Jesus Christ, and with that, the promise of new life. As Unitarian Universalists and people of faith, I believe that we can learn from this time of waiting, no matter our theological perspective. The phrase in Genesis, "let there be light," is the image of the divine energy that brought everything into being. In the Christianity that many of us grew up with, Jesus is the light, God is the light, but there's nothing about light within humanity. In this line of thought, God becomes primarily transcendent, beyond humanity. God comes to humanity through his son, Jesus. And we as human beings have no agency to save ourselves. It all comes through God. Now, this philosophy put Christianity on a path of looking to God rather than within the human heart for this divinity. Our job is to believe, and God does the rest. There's not a lot of room here for doubt or questioning or beliefs in other ways. And this thinking has led to the belief that one religious system is an exclusive path to a better world, both here and now and even after death. It's an idea that has increased the levels of intolerance, war, destruction, oppression in the world. Its ideals Ideas like this that lead a young man riding his bicycle past me as I engage in my weekly practice of racial justice activism, holding my Black Lives Matter sign on a street, to look me square in the eye and say in a quiet, measured tone, no, they don't. I think this is the God that many Unitarian Universalists have come to have a strong distrust of, because the next step often seems to be either to impose that truth on others or treat non-believers as second-class citizens. Either way, it begins to oppress. In December of 1945, an Egyptian farmer went out to the cliffs that skirt the Nile near the town of Nag Hammadi, and it was there he came across an earthenware jar of obviously ancient origin. Inside it, he discovered a cache of 13 leather-bound codices or papyrus books that contained more than 50 individual tracts of various origin. The Nag Hammadi Library, as it has become known, has provided new insights in the study of the New Testament. Among the treatises found in it was the one that we know as the Gospel of Thomas, and it is a collection of 114 sayings of Jesus. Now, in the Gospel of Thomas, we carry the light within us. The light connects us. We access it by getting in touch with that which is good within ourselves. In Thomas, it is through the light that we know God, and that the light resides in each and every one of us. And we gain access to this light when we look for it. We have it within us because we are created in the divine image. This divine light allows us to understand our connection with one another because we all have this divine light. Thus, we are all deeply connected. We are all one, a unity. The mythic story about the birth of Jesus is that Jesus comes to tell us that the divine light is manifest in all beings and that we can gain access to it by believing that it is there, by looking for it within ourselves. This is a very experiential way of looking at it. It's an optimistic, inspiring call to the best inside of us. It is a mystical view of divine transcendence and immanence. God is actually within us and not just out there. Our Unitarian forefather, William Ellery Channing, in 1828, preached a sermon on human likeness to God, and specifically posited that the divinity within us, which could render humankind more and more partakers of the moral perfection of the Supreme Being. It was that sermon that heavily influenced the thinkers like Emerson and Thoreau that infused our tradition to look beyond Christianity for sources of wisdom and truth. In many ways, I think it's Thomas's gospel that is precisely needed at a point where our earth is suffering, when so many people are suffering. COVID, oppression, racism, xenophobia, and so much more. If indeed God is found under every stone, rock, and human being, then perhaps our seventh principle of Unitarian Universalism, which is the interdependent web of existence of which we are all a part, is an integral part of Thomas's gospel. John Burens, past president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, tells us that life's gifts are available to everyone, not just the chosen or the saved. We are all a part of the interdependent web and are all a part of God's body. The story of the birth of Jesus is that he comes to invite us to be like him, to embody God's love and let God's light shine within and to find it in others. And when times are at their worst, it is our own light that helps us find our way through. Our task then is to become intimately acquainted with our own light so that it shines brightest when times are dark, and to recognize and see that light within those we love and in those who are different from us. And so we wait. We wait with awe-filled hearts for the coming of this Jesus, for love to be reborn in ourselves and in all the beings of the earth. May it be so. Amen. Namaste. Blessed be.
Within the shining of a star, we catch a glimpse of who we are. In every infant born we see the hope of our nativity. The miracle of each new birth can shake and save the stony earth. Triumphantly the newborn's cry strikes echoes from the waiting sky.
We use the chalice as the symbol of our congregation, but the light of our chalice would soon flicker and die without the fuel that nourishes its flames. And just as this flame cannot burn without fuel, this religious community cannot survive or thrive without the financial as well as personal support of its members and friends. These are the fuel that keeps the flame of our liberal religious youth faith alive and fuels the shared vision and ministry of this congregation. Let us now give freely and generously an offering to sustain and strengthen our shared religious community, a community of memory, hope, faith, and love. For we are the keepers of the chalice flame that burns for justice and for its dream of a world made whole.
Take Christmas. Take the ancient, the medieval, and the modern. Take what is sacred, secular, solemn, and silly. Take Teutonic evergreen and Persian sun and Druid mistletoe. Take Jewish flame and Greek feast and Roman present. Take a Bethlehem babe in a stable, surrounded by shepherds and kings with a brilliant star overhead. Take a Mideastern saint, transformed through the centuries to a red-suited elf with a sack full of toys and a reindeer-drawn sleigh. Take music from many countries, as the imagination can grasp. Take Amal and Scrooge and Rudolph. Take lighted tree and punch bowl and greeting card. Take mittened carolers and charitable gifts and candlelight services. Take it all or take any part. Take its courage, its hope, its joy, its peace, its goodwill. Take Christmas. But to take it, you must also add to its light. And now to Jane.
Let Christmas come, its story told, when days are short and winds are cold. Let Christmas come, its lovely song, when evening's soon and night is long. Let Christmas come, its bright star glow on quiet city parks of snow. Let Christmas come, its table gleam, when love again the truth of dream.
As we extinguish our chalice, I invite you to join us for the congregational meeting. You'll do this in the same way that you would join us for coffee. Exit this room. When the screen appears, just click on the purple coffee mug, and you will be taken there. I extinguish the chalice holding so much of what we have heard today in our hearts, recognizing, as Samaya offered, that the light within is the divinity within. And so we take the chalice light now within each of us. And to Jane for our sung benediction.